So thank you so much for taking the time today to talk to me about your career in computer forensics.
No problem at all. Thank you.
All right, so I just want to, first of all, introduce you to my students. This is Chase Ritchie, and he works in computer forensics. And he's been doing that for how long?
I've been doing it for almost 3 years now, computer forensics and data recovery. So they're kind of related fields, but data recovery is more of a niche field in that not a lot of people do it or have the tools to do it. It's very expensive.
Okay, and what would you say your title is?
Data recovery specialist and forensic analyst. A little bit of both of those. It's kind of flash.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about what your background is. Let's talk about education, and just start with education, and then we'll go into like what kind of certifications you think you have and that kind of thing.
Okay, well, as far as education goes, I went 2 years to a school called Chattahoochee Technical College. I got my associate's degree in information security, and then I actually did get a certification for Security Plus, which is through CompTIA. So.
Okay. And I think recently you completed a certification for your specialized field, which was?
I finished a private detective's license, so I'm working my way through actually getting a detective's license. It takes 2 years to do after you complete a 70-hour course, at least for Georgia, but those laws change for every state. Some states you don't need it at all.
And why do you think it's necessary in Georgia? Why do you think it's necessary in Georgia for you to have a private investigator or detective's license?
Well, actually, in Georgia, it's very strict on what you can and can't do with that with computers, like cracking passwords. Like a lot of people think that you can just crack passwords, and we do that all day. That's not necessarily the case, because it's actually illegal for us to crack passwords unless it's a password that we can prove is from the actual client. It's their password that they forgot. But there's a murky area legally with that, so it's pretty strict in Georgia.
Okay, and so while you were in college, you did some internships. So what is your previous experience?
So I did 8 months at an internship where I did computer repair. It was just basic computer repair and networking with people, and I helped work in a couple doctor's offices where we repaired some server equipment and stuff like that. And then I also worked for about 8 months at a tech support place doing Verizon business technical support.
And what were some high school classes that you took that prepared you for?
Some of the ones that really prepared me were actually the business classes and, well, the technology classes as well. Surprisingly enough, the classes that dealt with using documents like Word and Excel and stuff like that were probably the most beneficial classes I had in high school.
Great.
So.
All right, well that's great. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what is a typical day like for somebody who's in computer forensics. What are some of the things that you do?
Okay, so my normal day is bouncing around from multiple projects. I kind of feel like a mad scientist when I'm at work because we have to do all kinds of different things. I start out by answering all these customers' emails. That's the first thing, just get all the emails and the communications out of the way. Usually about 5 to 10 of those a day. And then after I do my emails, then I usually move to data recovery. I check on all my different machines. So we've got, as you can see in some of the pictures that I presented to you, we've got computers that go all the way around our lab in basically a circular form, and I go to each one of those computers and make sure that our copying processes, our forensic processes are just flowing smoothly and nothing's going wrong. So that's the next thing I do. And then usually after that, we'll get a few drives in for either evaluations or rebuilds. So evaluations, I look at the drive and determine what's wrong with it so that I can report to the client and say, this is what we need to do to fix it. With the rebuilds, they already know what's wrong with it. I've already told them, and we've got a secondary drive so that we can actually take the parts out of one drive and put it into another. So that's the next thing I do. I always rebuild those drives. And then when it comes to forensics, it can be a different thing every day. There's no telling. Sometimes we get cell phones in that we have to recover. Sometimes we get whole computers, servers, all kinds of different devices, everything, iPads, laptops, all that kind of stuff. And everything's different in forensics. You have to learn different techniques depending on what type of technology you're working with.
So can you explain to me kind of what computer forensics is in like layman terms? Because I guess even though I've taught computer science before or computer classes before, I'm not exactly sure what the computer forensics thing is. What exactly are you doing?
So there's a whole cycle to this kind of thing. There's a whole process that's laid out, and it starts with first thing that you're doing is you're gathering the evidence and taking pictures of all the evidence. So the first thing that happens is a piece of new equipment either comes in or we go on site and we see the equipment, we find the serial numbers for all that equipment, we take the pictures of each piece of equipment so we can prove, hey, yes, this was such and such a computer and that's what we were working on, and this is the equipment that they have.
So let me interrupt for a minute. So you're solving a problem for a client and you're solving it by looking inside of the computer's data, right?
Yes.
Or the equipment's data.
Yes.
So are you looking at code during this time when you're looking at that?
All kinds of different stuff. We get, the coolest thing about our job is that we get an insight into everybody else's jobs. When we're working on financial cases, we have to learn a little bit about what it's like to be a financial manager or an accounting professional. So it just really depends. But yeah, we're looking at small snippets. Like with data recovery, people want like a full file or something back that they lost.
Mm-hmm.
But with forensics, we're not necessarily doing that. We're just looking at shreds of items. So it could be like 1 kilobyte piece of a file could be enough to be evidence.
So you're putting together evidence to show maybe a trail that somebody followed or something that somebody did, and that's used in court.
Correct.
Okay.
So we do both civil and criminal cases, and not a lot of people in our industry actually do criminal cases because it's a difficult process and you leave yourself open for a little bit of liability with the criminal cases.
So would you say, let's get into the next question was, what specific skills or that you really need to be a computer forensics person? What would you say are some specific skills? It sounds to me like you have to be very good at being detail oriented and
Correct, yeah.
keeping track of information.
Yes. So being able to be very detailed in your notes is a really important fact, and being just detail oriented, going through everything. You have to be determined because again, you're looking for these small shreds of items. You may be going through literally millions of items in a given day. It could take weeks for you to go through all the stuff in the computer that you're actually looking for, and you just have to be able to get all those items together. Anything that looks even remotely close to something that you may have some value to the client, you have to be able to find that, document it, and then be able to keep track of what you've done. So it's a lot of just documenting and then keeping track of everything as you make your way through the process.
And what computer type of skills do you need to have? What
a lot of
computer
different
knowledge?
ones. So it's good to have a basic understanding of how a hard drive works, first of all, because you're dealing with sectors and bytes, and there's actually a stunning amount of people in computer forensics that don't know how these things work because they're not taught in school anymore. So the really only way you're going to learn about how file systems work, how hard drives work, and everything like that is by doing your own independent research or having some sort of mentor that can help you through that process.
Okay. And what about coding? Is that part of it too?
Coding,
knowing how to read some code?
Coding is helpful. You don't necessarily need to know how to actually do coding because I'm not very good at coding myself.
Okay.
However, understanding what's written there and being able to take snippets out of the code and say, well, this code was set up to do this is pretty useful. So like sometimes one of the big things now is how browsers work, because almost everything we do nowadays is focused on the internet, right? So most of the evidence that we find is internet-based evidence. So understanding how to read HTML and understanding how to read CSS and understanding how to read JavaScript is important, and you can get snippets of information based upon what history they've been to and different things that they've done. So it's kind of forensics is different because you're really getting the deepest understanding of what the computer does, all the way down to almost assembly language in some cases. So,
Oh, wow. Okay, so what are some of your typical clients?
we've had lots of really different clients. Now, some of the things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis are, for example, divorce cases. divorce cases are just a constant. We always get them in, and with the way society is now, there's lots of divorces. So that's something that happens a lot, where we'll have a case where the woman or the man will call us and say, I think my husband or wife is cheating on us. Can you find evidence of what they're doing? And in these cases, the best thing to have is their cell phone, because everybody does everything on their cell phone these days. So
some other type of court would be for, how about for business? What are some typical?
So for business, we've had everything from embezzlement cases all the way down to actually people running companies within companies. So one case, we had this guy who trusted his people a lot and never came to his office ever, the owner of the company. And what they were doing is they were selling all the company equipment that they could through eBay, and they were using all the company resources to run their own business within the business itself.
Double dipping.
Yes, exactly, double dipping. So that's a good, we see those ones all the time, but then we do also see criminal cases. I mean, we have worked on murder cases, we've worked on theft cases, we've worked on all kinds of different stuff that have to deal with that. There's a lot of suspicious fire cases that we get where we have to bring in DVRs with the home videos or the office surveillance equipment, and we have to repair those drives so that the investigators can read or see what happened on those videos.
And how many companies how widespread do you think careers in this area are, or what's the demand for careers in this area?
Well, I'm gonna say that this is probably the best possible option that you can take right now in the computer world. And the reason I say that is because computers, technology changes constantly, but the need for forensics is not going to go away. It's only going to get more and more necessary as we move in time, because everybody's using their equipment more and more often. Now, that being said, it can be difficult because of the changing technologies. We're always having to learn something new constantly. Anytime something new comes out, like the new MacBooks, are encrypted by default. So that poses a specific problem to us, because we can't make a copy of that MacBook easily without changing bits and bytes on our end as well. So we have to be able to prove that and say, hey, we had to do it this way because of this technical limitation. But then also tools change with that as well too. So
very interesting. So what do you like the most about your job?
My favorite part about the job is actually working on the equipment. Being able to do physical changes and getting all the new toys too. Really, it's toys to me. It's all fun new stuff that we get every month or so. We're getting a new tool or a new capability to try something out. Because of the way that our job works, I get to be the first one to try these new expensive pieces of equipment out, like the Celebrate, which is a great tool. If you look that up, it's a $10,000 cell phone imaging tool, and it's one of my favorite things to play with. So
it sounds like you have to be creative, a great problem solver, have some communication skills, and really have a really thorough knowledge of how technology works and how individual pieces of technology work.
Absolutely.
Sounds exciting.
And a lot of reverse engineering is, you put a lot of reverse engineering into everything you do. So.
Sounds very exciting. What don't you like about your job?
Well, there are some things. I mean, customers, I'm not a very people-oriented person, so customers can get on my nerves sometimes. That's probably my least favorite part of it. But also, some of the lawyers can be a little annoying too. But other than that, it's really just the customer communications. That's just part of it, and it's just something that you have to be able to do. You have to be able to communicate with your customers and explain what's going on. And sometimes when you've been doing this for as long as I have, you get into this mode where you are talking to people who understand technology most of the time. So it's hard to kind of dumb it down and make it in layman's terms in some points in time. So.
All right, so I want to ask you a little bit about what was your favorite case, but I know that we can't say names or anything like that. So just in general, can you tell us about maybe one of your favorite cases that you've had?
One that I did early on that I actually broke and found the information for is an embezzlement case that I did, where I found that a company was asking for all this money from the parent company, and turns out that that money that they were using was for expensive dinners, stuff that they weren't authorized to do, and they were just wasting money like crazy. So it was an embezzlement case. That was one of my favorites. And then another one that I really, really liked was we had a father and his daughter come in. The daughter was in school, in medical school, and she was actually saying that she wanted to prove to her father and to everybody who was starting these rumors about her faking an illness. We actually got the equipment, we had her computer, and we analyzed the computer. Everything looked fine at first. We were like, okay, well, she looks like she's telling the truth. Until we found an iPhone backup. At some point in time, she had plugged her iPhone in, and it automatically backed up to her computer. We parsed the iPhone backup. Once we did that, we actually found tons of evidence against her. So, needless to say, her father was not happy because he spent the money to try to prove his daughter's innocence, and instead she ended up proving her own guilt because all the evidence, all the smoking gun, everything was on her phone saying that she was doing this. She was using a fake name. She said that she had cancer, and she started a whole charity for herself so that she could raise money. So
wow, and it's amazing. So what people don't realize is that every single thing that you plug into electronics, even if you try to delete it, it's still there.
There's almost no way. There's a trail for everything. Everything logs everything, and it's so funny because 90% of the time these people come in, even our own clients come in, and they think they're smarter than we are. They think there's no way they're going to find any evidence of me doing anything, and they just don't understand that really everything you do is documented. Everything.
So determination for sure.
Yes.
So what is the worst case that you had? Maybe it was just the most frustrating or something you really didn't want to work on. What was the worst case?
Well, I'm going to say actually the one that I mentioned was my best case. This was also my worst case because it was very long term. The embezzlement case that we worked on took weeks of time out of what I was doing, and sometimes that can be frustrating when you have other projects as well. Having to work, having to mainly focus on this one long-term project, it can be a little bit difficult. So time management skills are also very important. But yeah, that was also my worst because it was very, very frustrating. I mean, it still took an ungodly amount of time for us to find the evidence that we need. Or sometimes you don't really know what you're looking at too, and that's the other thing. You look at this piece of evidence and this guy's saying, I'm going to transfer money, but do you really know what he's talking about? Do you know if it's legitimate or not? So you're collecting all of this stuff, hoping that somebody else can tell you whether it's important to them or not sometimes.
This brings up a good question that I didn't ask earlier. So this evidence could be in what different types of forms?
So everything that we do is put into what we call a work product, which is our reporting. So what you're doing pretty much is writing up a whole, multi-page report, but you're sticking in basically snapshots of different things that you found. Because again, it's not full files, so you're not, just pasting a Word document or saying, here we found this Word document necessarily. It's like screenshots of what you're seeing pasted throughout, and then your explanation of why this would be here and what this means to your client.
So almost like you're preparing a case, like a lawyer, and you can take text messages, voice messages, emails, Word documents, code that might have been typed in for a website, all that kind of different information together is what forms the case.
Yes, absolutely.
Very interesting. So tell me, what do you think, what's the kind of a typical career path, or where can you go in this field? Like what are some of the different places you can go in this field?
So there's a few different things that you can do. I mean, there are major companies that you can work for that have in-house computer forensics, which is pretty interesting too. Like you might work for example, Walmart. Walmart has their own in-house computer forensics division in case there's a legal problem with one of their employees, in case there's a problem with a contractor or something like that, and they can do it all in-house. Then there are also small contracted companies like us, where we're just a few people and we, get contracted by lawyers as separate. Sometimes we get placed in as technically the lawyer's staff, stuff like that. Or you could work for the government, of course, and anywhere from you could work for the police and do computer forensics for the police. You can do it for the FBI, the GBI. Pretty much every level of enforcement has their own computer forensics teams. So that's also a possibility.
Very exciting. Do you have anything else that you feel that students that are thinking about this as a career should think about or know?
Well, it's great if you have the drive to do this. If you want to know every way that a computer functions, down to the file system, down to what the memory is doing. If you have a real interest for that, then this is a great field for you, and it's just really not going to go anywhere. You can make amazing amounts of money doing it. You can work on interesting things and travel the world. You can help do this all over the world. There are people that will hire you in multiple different countries, and it's a great field to get into. So.
Well, Mr. Ritchie, this has been a great conversation, and I know it's been useful for my students, so thank you very much.
Great, I hope it helped.